Okay, everyone. So we're doing a little bit of a different thing here in this video, and we're going to do a series of them. Really, we're aiming these at for people who are basically giving up on the state of the world and don't feel like they can do anything about homelessness and things like that. And ultimately, what we're trying to do here is show actually there is quite a lot you can do. So, just as a member of the public, you don't need to have any training. You just do it in your free time, basically, which is kind of what we do. And for many years with our work in Bedford, we've put freedom of information requests in, we've put questions into housing committees, and it's something we're really looking to ramp up in terms of getting people together who've got the same kind of ideas and are looking to make similar improvements. So there's basically a whole bunch of us who are interested in this, and we kind of discussed different things with different people. And these questions that we've recently submitted to the housing committee are kind of part of that. So I can't remember how many questions were submitted. I think about 7 or 8 or something. And for us in Bedford, again, just probably worth saying, it's kind of there are similarities elsewhere in the country, but we've just had a local election, which means the housing committee is, as far as I can tell, brand new. I don't know if there are any councillors that were on the housing committee before. I might be wrong about that. There might be one or two. But basically, so this is a new bunch of people. They can basically blame everything on the previous bunch and kind of make some changes. So they're not invested in the decisions that the previous committees made. So it's a really good time to educate them, because ultimately I would say that your interaction and democracy type stuff with local elections and local politics has a far more or a far greater ability to make changes than kind of lobbying central government. Unless you're shelter or crisis, there's no point lobbying central government. But you can make a lot of differences with local government because they have a lot of power. They can make a lot of different choices that are going to affect people in different ways. So we might talk about some of the wins we've had in previous years, but really we're kind of having a bit of a new push. And so these videos, it's a long way to get around to, but these videos are really about what questions do we ask, why do we ask them, what difference do they make, if any? What's the follow-on work that we're going to do, and kind of as I say, kind of what can we build on going forward. And it's probably worth saying as well that we're doing some work with Citizens UK, which is like a community organisation, and that's the whole model is just about getting local people who care about stuff together and then get a little bit organised and start kind of pushing for things in a more formal way than just kind of people, all kind of doing their own thing. So yeah, hopefully that will make sense. As I say, there's not really any housing law. Well, there is some housing law actually, but it's not kind of the normal sort of videos we do. But hopefully they'll still be interesting. As I say, hopefully they'll give you some inspiration. These are things you can do in your local council. So the last committee that we had in Bedford was 2 weeks ago, beginning of mid-June, basically 2023. This video has been made, and normally they broadcast it on YouTube, but this time for whatever reason they didn't. So we were able to get an audio recording of the meeting, but that's kind of we don't have anything more than that, and so it wasn't the audio recording quality wasn't brilliant, so we can't catch everything. But we're going to go through, probably in each video we're just going to go through what the question was, why we asked it, and blah blah blah. So the first one was from someone called Katrina, who happens to be my missus. And basically, she was picking up on this kind of fact that there's a whole bunch of new councillors who are in post in the housing committee. There are 1 or 2 new councillors who are elected as well. There wasn't a great changeover. The mayor is now, there's a new mayor, so the new mayor's kind of in post now, which is the big change. But most councillors are still the same. But as I say, the committee itself, the housing committee, is a lot of new faces. So the question was essentially, what training do councillors get on housing law and safeguarding law and that type of stuff that enables them to to kind of refer people and pick up on situations that they're going to come across in their casework and their kind of surgeries, in order for them to identify when someone's homeless. Because one of the biggest difficulties we kind of have, one of the kind of things we always go on about is the fact that homelessness is far broader than just people sleeping rough. So lots of people say, oh, sleeping, homelessness is ended, doesn't it? Because there's hardly anyone sleeping rough. But the fact is, the number of homeless people is continuing to increase. It's at record levels. So that's so people will be going to counsellors, they'll be going to their advice surgery saying, my landlord's trying to evict me or something, or I can't afford my rent, what can I do? I'm experiencing abuse, all those kind of things which will come out in those conversations. And ultimately a lot of those things would be very relevant to a homeless application. And ultimately, if you look at the code of guidance, paragraph 18.5, it basically says that homeless applications can be made to any department of the local authority and expressed in any particular form. So we don't see, although we haven't seen any case law on this, we can't see how the councillors are not part of the council. They've got council email addresses. They are by definition part of the council, and therefore a department is my reasoning. And so in theory, as far as we can tell, homeless applications would potentially be triggered if someone went to a council, says, "Look, I'm homeless. Can you help me out?" Or even, "I'm experiencing domestic abuse. Can you help me with housing?" We think that would trigger a homeless application. But as I say, we've not seen any specific case law on that, as far as we can tell. There might be some there. There's some cases like Edwards v Birmingham, I think, which might be some stuff in there. But so yeah, that's the kind of the reason for the question. So the question is basically saying, what training do councillors get? How are they supposed to know all this stuff that they need to know in order to do their job properly? And what we're not really asking is for them to do, to kind of make inquiries and that sort of thing. But all we're really wanting them to do is to be able to identify people who might be homeless, and then quickly refer them to the relevant team so that the professionals can take over and get involved. So Shannon, you kind of thought through the recording and you kind of made all the notes. So what essentially was the response from this question?
So I was quite pleased that Lee Franco sort of did explain that, not every form of homelessness is simple to identify. It's not as simple as, say, rough sleeping. There are sort of more complex cases. But I think where the answer fell down a little for me was where it wasn't reasonable to expect the local councillors to have that sort of knowledge. And whilst I wouldn't expect them to know how to make inquiries or what inquiries, or even potentially down to priority need aspects. I think when you're voting for your councillor and they're an elected member, then actually it is reasonable to expect them to be able to identify homelessness. I think sort of statistics go, most people are one paycheck away from it. And I would argue that actually most people are probably homeless before they even realise they are. And so I think if you're supposed to go to someone for help, then it is reasonable for them to have an understanding, to require some sort of training, much as they do around safeguarding. Now, the safeguarding element of the question wasn't answered because it was outside of the Housing Committee's remit, and it was referred to suggested to be asked to another committee. But I think where we see homelessness and safeguarding law mirrored, to me, it just kind of makes sense to include homelessness training within that. And if the council are, I think, being realistic with their tackle of treating homelessness seriously, and, government wants to end it and all of that jazz, then to do that seriously, I think the training and the knowledge needs to be there.
Yeah, I think it's so just a bit of background. So Lee Fanco's the head of service, decent guy in my opinion. We don't always agree on everything, but capable and guy. He cares about doing the right thing. I think he cares. He actually cares about the issue, which is refreshing. Um, and we haven't had, as I say, we haven't had the answer from the adult safeguarding scrutiny committee, whatever it's called, adult services scrutiny committee, about the safeguarding thing. But my guess would be is that councillors are all put onto the basic safeguarding awareness training course. If they're not, I'd be surprised. It's possible, but Shannon used to say, like, so there's this symmetry between Section 42 of the Care Act, the safeguarding duties, and Section 184 of the Housing Act in terms of the homes application duties. And where it would not be controversial at all for people to be doing basic safeguarding awareness training, it does seem to still kind of be surprising that we might ask that they do some kind of basic homelessness awareness training. So part of Lee's answer was that essentially all councillors get this written information, which I guess is supposed to inform them about everything they need to know about homelessness. Which, as you say, Shannon, they don't need to know that much about it. They just need to be able to recognise it and know what they then do with it. So, yeah, I think that one sense the follow up from this is okay, we've FOI'd as in made a freedom of information request saying, well, let's see these documents that councillors are given, because how much detail do they go into? We don't know. Are they adequate? Are they actually correct? Because we don't know that either. So, in one sense, this whole kind of thing in democracy is what councils do is largely speaking accessible by the members of the public. They have to be transparent. So we want to see what it is they actually tell councillors, so we can then potentially either input on it. We might raise issues about shortcomings, and that's really all kind of there. And ultimately, again, just kind of going back to this big picture stuff, councillors have got loads of plates to spin. They've got huge amounts of pressures. Councils are bust. They are often in a very bad situation. And so the councillors have got a lot of things kind of calling on their attention, lots of things fighting for their attention. And actually, by raising these kind of questions, you know, we potentially bump homelessness up the list of priorities a little bit. That's what we're hoping to do anyway. So I don't think that, there's no harm's going to come from asking this question. I think what the things that it's are going to achieve are, first of all, it's going to get all the councillors in the housing committee to think, oh, do I actually know the definition of homelessness? Do I know what happens if someone comes to a surgery and asks me for advice? And once they kind of answer that for themselves, they then think, well, do my colleagues in my party know that stuff as well? How often do they get? Because Lee Vanko mentioned that many referrals come to housing options from councillors, but my guess is they don't come from every councillor. Even though I would have thought every councillor is dealing with people who are homeless during some point in their kind of their tenure, I would imagine that some councillors are much quicker to take things to the housing options team than others. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to iron out. We're trying to get that consistency. So it doesn't matter what ward you're in, whoever your councillor is, you go to them for assistance. They're going to step in. And I guess another thing here as well is that if we can push councillors to kind of know more stuff and kind of say, well, actually, you should know some of this stuff anyway, then hopefully they'll also be able to hold the council to account. Now, we've seen it in the past, and again, Bedford's improved in a lot of different ways, significantly over the years. But certainly, I've seen cases, back in the day where something outrageous would happen. The councillor would ask the housing team, did you do anything wrong? And the housing team would say, oh no, we didn't do anything wrong. And the councillor would then say, oh, well, I'll defend you then. And it's like, no, you need to actually scrutinise what the housing team, what they're really doing. Because yeah, you're going to have those cases who are, they are unreasonable. Those kind of individuals who are unreasonable when they kind of make, I can't remember the words, the kind of, the vexatious complaints or whatever. They kind of make stupid complaints over and over again, and they take up a lot of time. I've certainly worked with one or two people like that, and they can, it's good to know the law just to kind of know we're actually, they're actually, the council's actually doing a good job. But in many more cases, there are probably going to be situations where the housing team has not done their job properly, and the councillor needs to really know about that so they can hold them to account. I mean, it's probably worth saying a few things on the tail end of this one is that, well, go on, Shannon, you were about to, yeah.
Just going to say, I think another potential route of interest for me is actually how many councillors are making inquiries and are making referrals to the housing options team, potentially even asking what areas, because I think that says a lot about which councillors are really invested in the issue and potentially which councillors, have the scope or the excitement to sort of focus down on these issues that we often bring to the housing committee.
Yeah, and we keep saying we work in Bedford Borough, like that's where our focus is, that's where we live. But these things are all kind of transferable elsewhere. And Bedford's, it's kind of fairly typical in the sense that there's a town, and then it's surrounded by villages basically. So you've got a mixture of urban and rural, kind of communities. And so your central locations in town are probably more likely to come across homelessness. The councillors there are going to know more about it than the people out in the sticks. But the point is, you are still going to have homelessness out in the sticks. You're still going to have domestic abuse. You're still going to have these other kind of issues that will crop up. So I think ultimately what I hope is that every councillor gets some kind of 2-hour online session with care, something that just points out to them this is the stuff that matters. And again, that kind of has that knock-on effect of them understanding the issue more broadly, and because they've not, if it's not their background, which it probably won't be, why would they know this stuff? And when it comes to kind of responding to homelessness, funding homelessness, all those kind of decisions that they are going to be involved in, if they know more about homelessness, that's not a bad thing for homeless people. That's a good thing. They're going to hopefully make better decisions and kind of have more attention to it. We're concerned that the new kind of politicians in Bedford might be tempted to try and kick everyone out of TA. That's not because of anything they've said, but just because the temporary accommodation costs a huge amount of money. So that would be somewhere where they might naturally want to cut, and ultimately we want to kind of try to prevent that by getting councillors up to speed with where things are at, really. So I feel like there's one other thing I was going to say about this, but I can't remember what it was now. So that'll do. Yeah, I mean, as I say, these videos really just there to kind of just give people some ideas to go and do it locally. Yeah, as I say, some of these questions, as you'll see, do make a difference quite quickly actually sometimes. So yeah, that's all from this one. But yeah, stay tuned for this series because we're going to do a whole bunch of them and all the questions we've asked. So we'll see you in a bit.